It's awareness. He understands that not every interaction deserves his energy, and not every connection deserves his consistency. In relationships, this principle plays out quietly but powerfully. A woman may not consciously realize it, but she feels it. The difference between a man who needs her and a man who wants her but is willing to lose her rather than lose himself. The first chases validation, the second holds value. The more available someone is, the less the mind perceives their worth. The man who can step back, who can say no, creates an energetic shift. He's not withholding love, he's preserving balance. That scarcity, the ability to walk away, makes every moment of presence more meaningful, every gesture more intentional. We often think desire is born from closeness, but in truth, it's born from space. Space allows reflection, anticipation, and appreciation. When he withdraws, it challenges her perception of her own importance. It makes her question what she overlooked. His silence becomes a mirror, showing her where she may have confused attention for affection. The man who knows his value doesn't rush to explain himself. He doesn't chase to fix what was never his to mend. His restraint becomes his power. Scarcity also teaches discernment. A man who knows his worth doesn't pour endlessly into someone who's indifferent. He understands the law of exchange, that energy must be mutual to grow. So he walks away, not in bitterness, but in clarity. His absence becomes the lesson. It teaches others how to treat him, but it also redefines what love should feel like. Not desperate, not fearful, but chosen. There is something undeniably magnetic about someone who doesn't need to be needed. That energy, that independence awakens curiosity. It's not the chase that draws people in. It's the mystery of someone who cannot be owned. The man who walks away embodies self-control in a world addicted to attention. His scarcity is not emptiness, it's depth. He chooses peace over chaos, alignment over attachment, and that choice radiates. It's rare, it's powerful, it's valuable. And because it's rare, it becomes the very thing that others crave but can never easily possess. The presence of someone who knows when to leave, and more importantly, when not to stay. There is a unique kind of energy that surrounds a person who truly respects themselves. It's quiet, yet it commands attention. It doesn't shout, demand, or prove. It simply exists, grounded, steady, and sure. When a man carries the energy of self-respect, he moves differently. He speaks less, but with more weight. He doesn't chase validation because his worth isn't dependent on how others respond to him. He knows that the way he treats himself sets the standard for how others will treat him. Self-respect is not ego, it's self-awareness. It's knowing where you end and where another begins. It's understanding that peace is more valuable than attention and that silence is more powerful than forced conversation. A man rooted in self-respect doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't try to convince anyone to stay. He allows people the freedom to choose, and in doing so, he reveals his own strength. That energy creates safety, not because he's unshakable, but because he doesn't lose himself in the process of loving someone else. Women can feel this energy. It's subtle but magnetic. It's not the loud confidence that comes from pride. It's the still confidence that comes from alignment. When a man carries self-respect, his presence tells her that he won't tolerate being diminished, manipulated, or emotionally starved. And ironically, that very boundary makes him more desirable. Because at her core, every woman wants to feel the stability of a man who respects himself enough to protect his peace. The energy of self-respect creates balance in connection. It prevents overgiving, over-explaining, and over-compromising. It teaches that love should never cost you your dignity. When a man can walk away rather than betray his values, he emits a strength that can't be ignored. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about being emotionally intelligent enough to know when his presence no longer adds value. That decision to honor himself, even in love, is what makes him unforgettable. This energy doesn't compete, doesn't chase, and doesn't seek to dominate. It simply holds space. It says, I am enough as I am. That silent assurance is what draws others in. The woman may not fully understand why she feels drawn to him, but it's the respect he shows himself that makes her feel safe in his energy. He becomes the example of how strength and softness can coexist. A man who doesn't fight for attention, yet never fades into the background. When a man moves with self-respect, he teaches through his behavior, not his words. His standards become his language. His boundaries become his power. And his detachment from chaos becomes his peace. That's the kind of energy that doesn't just attract, it inspires. It doesn't seek to own or impress. It simply reflects what every heart quietly craves. Someone who values themselves enough to walk in truth, even if it means walking alone. In every connection, there's an unspoken exchange of energy. One gives, one takes, one leads, one follows. But when a man walks away, something shifts. The power dynamic that once favored emotional dependency suddenly reverses. The woman who once felt in control, certain of his presence, begins to feel the quiet weight of his absence. It's not a game. It's a natural response to balance being restored. Because true power never lies in who holds on tighter. It lies in who is willing to let go. When a man stops chasing, the energy changes. He's no longer reacting, no longer orbiting around her attention. He returns to himself, to his center, and that act alone reclaims his power. The moment he detaches emotionally, not out of bitterness but clarity, she feels it. That void he leaves behind isn't just physical, it's energetic. She begins to question what she overlooked, what she took lightly, what she thought she could control. The same woman who once dismissed his consistency now becomes curious about his calm. That's the reversal. The one who walked away gains emotional leverage without trying to. This shift isn't about dominance, it's about alignment. When a man chooses himself over validation, he breaks a pattern, the pattern of seeking worth in someone else's approval. That moment of choosing peace over pursuit changes everything. It reminds her that his energy was not guaranteed, that his presence was a privilege, not a given. And when she realizes that, the desire to be chosen replaces the comfort of being chased. The dynamic has flipped, not because he took her power, but because he reclaimed his own. In relationships, power is fluid. It flows naturally toward the one who is least afraid to lose the other. The man who walks away holds that strength. He doesn't beg. He doesn't explain endlessly. He simply honors what is real and releases what is forced. That quiet confidence draws more attention than any desperate attempt to hold on ever could. She begins to feel his energy differently, not as someone seeking her, but as someone she must now earn. There's also an emotional truth behind this reversal. When he steps back, it allows her to see the imbalance that once existed. It exposes how much she depended on his consistency to feel validated, and how she mistook his patience for weakness. The absence teaches her what presence meant. And that lesson, though uncomfortable, is transformative, because once she realizes that his silence is strength, her respect replaces her control. The reversal of power dynamics isn't about winning, it's about awakening. It's the moment both people see what the connection truly was, who gave too much and who gave too little. The man who walks away doesn't gain control through manipulation, but through truth. He reminds her, and himself that real power doesn't come from being wanted. It comes from being whole. Emotional detachment has a kind of power that few understand. It's not coldness or indifference, it's mastery over one's emotions. When a man carries this kind of calm, composed energy, it creates mystery, a magnetic pull that draws others in without effort. He's not emotionally absent, but he's not ruled by his feelings either. He can care deeply and still choose distance when peace requires it. That balance between sensitivity and restraint is what makes him so intriguing. People want to understand him, but he gives them only fragments, never the whole story, and that keeps him unforgettable. A man who is emotionally detached doesn't over-explain himself. He's not addicted to being understood, and that alone separates him from the rest. He can listen without reacting, love without losing himself, and walk away without collapsing. This level of control feels mysterious because it's rare. In a world where most people are emotionally reactive, someone who stays steady no matter what's happening around him stands out. That stillness becomes magnetic. It's not that he hides his emotions, it's that he manages them. He feels everything but doesn't let those feelings dictate his behavior. That's where his mystery lies, in his quiet discipline. For women, this emotional detachment becomes fascinating, not because they want someone unavailable, but because that composure signals depth. It tells her there's more beneath the surface. Stories, experiences, lessons, but none of it is up for casual consumption. He doesn't reveal easily, and that guardedness becomes alluring. She feels safe around his steadiness, yet curious about what he holds back. It's that duality, safety and intrigue, that fuels her attraction. He becomes the question she wants to answer, but can't fully solve. Emotional detachment also shifts the dynamics of connection. It removes the desperation that often poisons relationships. When he's not clinging, not needing to be chosen, he creates space for real choice. His love is deliberate, not dependent, and that self-control makes his affection more valuable. She knows that if he gives his attention, it's not by accident, it's by decision. That awareness deepens her respect because his emotions aren't impulsive, they're intentional. Mystery lives in boundaries. The man who doesn't overshare, who knows when to step back, keeps his energy sacred. He doesn't perform vulnerability to be liked, and he doesn't use silence to punish. His distance isn't manipulation, it's protection. He gives what's earned, not what's demanded. That's why his presence feels different, calm, certain, and full of depth that can't be easily defined. Emotional detachment, when rooted in awareness, doesn't push people away. It draws them closer. It invites curiosity, respect, and sometimes even love. Because in a world full of noise, the one who can remain silent, steady, and mysterious becomes unforgettable. It's not about hiding, it's about honoring what's sacred within. And that quiet mystery speaks louder than any confession ever could. Masculine certainty is not about dominance or control. It's about grounded confidence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. It's the quiet strength of a man who knows who he is, what he stands for, and what he will not accept. When he walks into a room, he doesn't have to prove his worth or seek validation. His energy speaks before he does. It's not arrogance, it's assurance. He's not trying to convince anyone of his value because he's already convinced himself. That certainty creates safety. It's what allows others, especially women, to relax in his presence, not because he's perfect, but because he's clear. A man rooted in masculine certainty doesn't chase outcomes. He moves with intention, not desperation. His confidence isn't loud, it's felt. He doesn't panic when things don't go his way because he trusts his ability to adapt. This kind of man doesn't control people. He controls his responses. He knows that emotional discipline is strength. When he speaks, his words carry weight because they come from alignment, not insecurity. His certainty isn't rigid either. It's flexible, guided by wisdom rather than ego. He can stand firm in his truth while allowing others to hold theirs. This energy is rare, and that's why it's magnetic. A woman feels it instinctively, the difference between a man who's grounded in purpose and one who's still seeking himself through her. Masculine certainty doesn't chase love to feel whole. It meets love from a place of wholeness. That shift in energy changes everything. He doesn't beg to be chosen. He simply chooses. He knows that love isn't found in clinging, but in clarity, the clarity to know when to stay and when to walk away. And that decisiveness makes him deeply attractive. When a man embodies this level of certainty, his presence brings balance. He doesn't need to overpower or impress. His calm becomes a mirror for those around him. His silence isn't withdrawal, it's reflection. He listens more than he reacts, and when he does speak, it's with purpose. This composure makes others trust him because certainty creates stability, and stability in a world filled with emotional chaos feels like peace. Masculine certainty also comes from self-trust. He's made mistakes, learned from them, and no longer fears failure. He doesn't crumble under rejection or seek constant reassurance. Instead, he stands firm in who he is, knowing that nothing real can be lost by walking in truth. That's why his energy feels unshakable. He doesn't waver in the face of uncertainty. He becomes the calm within it. This kind of man doesn't need to be the loudest in the room. His strength is silent but undeniable. His certainty doesn't cage anyone. It frees them. It says, I know where I'm going and I don't need to control the outcome to trust the journey. That kind of presence doesn't just attract, it transforms because it reminds others of what true strength really feels like: peace. Every relationship contains moments of testing. Not always consciously, but deeply instinctively. Women often test not to manipulate, but to understand. It's the subconscious way of asking, can I trust you? Can I lean on you? Will you remain calm when I'm not? These tests don't come in words, but in energy, in small emotional shifts, in subtle challenges that reveal the truth beneath the surface. When a man faces these tests with emotional maturity instead of reaction, he shows something rare: strength without aggression, patience without passivity, and love without losing himself. Subconscious testing usually appears when emotional safety is uncertain. It might look like pulling away to see if he chases, creating conflict to see if he loses control, or questioning his consistency to see if he truly means what he says. It's not that she wants chaos, it's that she wants reassurance, not through promises, but through presence. When he remains composed, when he doesn't crumble under pressure or react defensively, it signals that he's emotionally grounded. That stability becomes her comfort. She begins to trust not his words, but his energy. The man who understands this doesn't see testing as rejection, he sees it as communication. He knows that emotional turbulence is often a reflection of fear, not disrespect. Instead of meeting fire with fire, he responds with calm clarity. He doesn't play games or withdraw to punish. He simply stands in his truth. His steadiness shows that his love isn't fragile, that it can hold space, even for doubt. And that kind of calm, grounded response shifts everything. It dissolves resistance and transforms tension into respect. Many men fail these subconscious tests because they interpret them through ego. They take every challenge personally, trying to prove their worth through dominance or retreat. But the one who passes them understands that it's not about winning, It's about remaining. It's about not allowing emotion to override integrity. When he stays centered, it tells her something no words could, that he is emotionally safe, that he won't abandon himself or her when things get difficult. That quiet strength is what earns her trust on a deeper level than words ever could. Subconscious testing also reveals authenticity. A man who pretends confidence will eventually be exposed, but the one who truly possesses it doesn't need to act. His composure is natural. When she challenges him and he remains kind yet firm, open yet unshaken, she senses his truth. And that truth creates attraction, not because he passed a test, but because he proved his stability without resistance. In the end, subconscious testing isn't about control. It's about connection. It's the heart's way of ensuring safety before surrender. The man who understands this doesn't run from the discomfort. He faces it with awareness, empathy, and calm authority. That's what transforms tension into trust, resistance into respect, and uncertainty into devotion. Not through reaction, but through emotional strength quietly proven in silence. Authenticity carries a vibration that cannot be faked. It's raw, honest, and deeply magnetic because it represents truth in a world obsessed with appearances. A man who chooses authenticity over approval stands out immediately, not because he's trying to, but because very few people have the courage to live that way. He doesn't adjust himself to be liked. He doesn't say what others want to hear. His energy speaks of alignment, the kind that comes from knowing that being real will always cost less than pretending. That quiet integrity becomes his power, and that power is what others, especially women, feel and respect on a subconscious level. Approval-seeking energy is heavy. It bends, compromises, and constantly looks outward for validation. It asks, "Am I enough?" But authenticity doesn't ask, it declares. It moves from a place of self-acceptance, not fear. The man who lives authentically is not perfect, but he's honest about who he is. He doesn't play roles to fit expectations. He's willing to disappoint others if it means staying true to himself. That self-honoring energy radiates confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything, and that's what makes him so compelling. When a man stops chasing approval, he becomes free from the exhausting cycle of trying to please, impress, or perform. He stops molding himself into what others find acceptable and begins living as who he truly is. That freedom translates into emotional clarity. He no longer fears rejection because he's not hiding. What you see is what you get. And paradoxically, that truth makes him more attractive because people crave realness even when they don't fully understand it. His authenticity feels refreshing, grounding, even healing to those who cross his path. In relationships, authenticity creates emotional safety. A woman can sense when a man is pretending, when his confidence is borrowed or his intentions are masked by fear. But when she meets authenticity, she relaxes. She no longer has to guess his motives or question his words. His honesty, even when uncomfortable, builds trust. He's not trying to be perfect. He's trying to be real. And that's what makes his presence powerful. His truth may not always please, but it never deceives. Choosing authenticity over approval also demands strength. It means being misunderstood, sometimes rejected, and often walking alone. But that solitude is sacred. It refines his energy and deepens his character. Over time, his authenticity becomes his identity, a steady presence that doesn't waver when faced with disapproval. He's no longer performing for the world, he's living for truth. In a society that rewards conformity, authenticity becomes rebellion, but it's the kind of rebellion that liberates rather than destroys. The man who lives this way becomes magnetic because he is whole, unfiltered, unapologetic, and real. He may not be everyone's favorite, but he will always be remembered. Because authenticity is timeless, while approval fades the moment the crowd changes its mind. Freedom is the essence of true attraction. It's the space where authenticity lives, where energy flows without resistance, and where love feels like choice instead of obligation. A man who embodies freedom carries a different kind of presence. He doesn't cling, he doesn't control, and he doesn't depend on being needed to feel whole. His independence becomes magnetic because it reflects self-mastery. He's not trying to possess anyone. He's simply at peace within himself. That kind of energy is rare, and it draws people in effortlessly, especially in a world where attachment often masquerades as love. Freedom is not the absence of care. It's the presence of control over oneself. It's knowing that you can love deeply without losing yourself. A man who understands this doesn't demand loyalty through fear or guilt. He earns it through his calm assurance. He allows others to choose him freely because he's not afraid of being alone, and that fearlessness becomes his strength. Women are drawn to that energy, not because it's distant, but because it's stable. It feels like breathing space in a world full of emotional chaos. His freedom gives others permission to be themselves too. There's something profoundly attractive about someone who doesn't need to own or control another person to feel secure. That energy feels safe and liberating at the same time. It says, I choose you, but I don't need to cage you. The man who walks in this truth becomes a paradox. He's detached yet deeply present, independent yet emotionally available. He can walk away, not because he doesn't care, but because he values peace more than power. His strength lies in choice, not control. That is the essence of real attraction. It's rooted in freedom, not fear. Freedom also means emotional sovereignty. He's not easily swayed by external validation, and that stability is what makes him so appealing. When he gives love, it's not an exchange for attention. It's an expression of truth. He's already fulfilled within himself, so his love comes without neediness or demand. That kind of love feels pure, not something to escape from, but something to grow within. And in his presence, others feel free too, free to express, to be flawed, to exist without judgment. The man who lives from freedom doesn't chase, he attracts. His energy says, I am whole, and I honor those who choose to walk beside me, not behind me. That alignment with self creates an aura of ease that is irresistible. People sense his lack of desperation and are drawn to it because freedom feels rare. It feels like truth. In the end, freedom is the ultimate attraction because it mirrors what every soul truly seeks: choice, peace, and authenticity. The man who embodies this doesn't try to hold on tightly. He simply lets things flow. His love is not a cage. It's a space where both can breathe, evolve, and remain whole. That's the kind of love that doesn't fade because it was never about possession, but presence. At its core, this entire message isn't about men or women. It's about energy, awareness, and self-worth. The man who can walk away doesn't do it to prove a point. He does it because he's learned that peace is more valuable than presence that costs him his identity. His strength doesn't lie in detachment, but in emotional maturity, the ability to love without losing himself. And that energy, that calm, grounded freedom, becomes the very thing that draws others toward him. Women don't desire his absence. They desire the stability it represents. They crave the balance of a man who can feel deeply yet remain centered, who can love fully yet stay free. It's not the act of walking away that's attractive. It's what it reveals: self-respect, authenticity, and certainty. He doesn't seek to dominate, impress, or control. He simply stands firm in who he is, and that stillness speaks louder than any pursuit ever could. The truth is, Power in love doesn't come from who chases or who leaves. It comes from who remains aligned with themselves no matter what happens. The man who walks away teaches a silent lesson that love rooted in freedom, self-respect, and authenticity will always be stronger than love rooted in fear or need. Because the one who knows when to let go is the one who's truly mastered connection. He doesn't walk away to end love. He walks away to protect its meaning. And in doing so, he becomes what every heart ultimately seeks: peace, depth, and truth wrapped in human form.